My name is Cole Anderson, 34, lead senior project director at Vanguard Tech. 7 years climbing the corporate ladder to lock down $1 billion infrastructure contract that put me on every industry leaderboard. Alara had been my everything for 8 years, 3 married, 5 dating before that. I built my entire world around her quiet, gentle warmth, the faint gardenia perfume she wore every single day, the way she'd hum old soft rock while cooking my favorite honey garlic ribs after every long work week. I trusted her with every password, every confidential work file, every secret I'd never dared speak aloud to another living soul. I thought our bond was unbreakable. Our 3rd wedding anniversary proved how deadly wrong I was. I left the office 3 hours early that day, picked up a dozen champagne roses from the boutique she loved, fully set on the upscale French bistro we'd booked months prior for our dinner reservation. When I unlocked the front door, she was standing at the kitchen counter in a linen apron, stirring a stainless steel pot of ribs, the house filled with sweet soy and caramelized garlic scent. I stepped up behind her, wrapped both arms tight around her waist, and buried my face against her neck to breathe in that familiar gardenia scent I craved nonstop. Her body stiffened hard for half a beat before she relaxed into my hold, but the tension lingered in her shoulders, rigid and unnatural. She twisted around to face me, her lips tugged into a soft, practiced smile that never touched her hazel eyes. Those eyes were flat, empty, murky like stagnant rainwater, no flicker of joy or affection like I was used to seeing on our anniversaries. I thought we agreed to eat out tonight, I said, handing her the bouquet of roses, my brow furrowed at her odd, distant demeanor. Restaurant meals are loaded with preservatives, she replied, her voice thin and lifeless, no warmth behind the words. I wanted to make your favorite food myself, just for us. She took the flowers without a single glance at the petals, grabbed a plain glass vase from the cabinet, and set them on the counter like they were a random grocery store purchase, not a thoughtful anniversary gift I'd spent an hour picking out. She plated the ribs, roasted asparagus, and truffle mashed potatoes onto 2 ceramic plates, uncorked an expensive bottle of Pinot Noir I'd stashed for special occasions, and poured a full glass for me before lifting her own empty tumbler. Do you remember how long we've known each other? She asked, swirling the wine slowly, her gaze fixed on the red liquid instead of my face. 8 years total, 3 years married. I answered instantly, those numbers etched permanently into my memory, milestones I'd never once forgotten. 8 whole years, she murmured, speaking more to herself than to me. The dinner dragged on in suffocating silence. She piled food onto my plate repeatedly, refilled my wine glass without asking, kept that hollow, unconvincing smile plastered to her face the entire time. Every time I tried to crack a joke or bring up our honeymoon trip we planned to revisit, she'd nod blankly and change the subject fast, never engaging with me properly. A sharp, unshakable unease settled heavy in my chest, but I brushed it off as stress from her small freelance design gigs, told myself she'd unwind once the meal ended. After we finished eating, I grabbed the stack of plates to carry them to the sink, refusing to let her clean up alone on our anniversary. As I turned on the tap to rinse off sauce residue, she stepped flush against my back, both arms looping around my torso, her cheek pressed cold against my shoulder blade. "Cole," she whispered, her voice thick with suppressed emotion. "Are you ever going to hate me?" I twisted around immediately, cupping her pale cheeks in my palms, confused by her weird question and icy skin. Her hands trembled violently where they rested on my hips, a fine tremor running through every finger. "Baby, what's there to hate? We've got everything we've ever wanted." I pulled her into a tight hug, rubbing slow circles across her back to soothe her. "Quit overthinking small nonsense, yeah? Let's go crash on the couch and watch that old rom-com you love." She didn't pull away or move toward the living room. She stayed pressed against my chest for 10 full minutes, completely motionless, until she finally tilted her head back to meet my eyes, tears pooling along her lower lash line while her mouth curved into a broken, bitter half-smile. "There's something you need to see. Follow me to the study." I trailed her down the hallway, my heart hammering against my ribs with mounting dread. She unlocked the bottom desk drawer I'd always left accessible to her, pulled out a thick brown manila folder, and handed it over without a single extra word. "What's this?" I asked, running my fingers over the sealed edge, a cold prickle of fear crawling up my spine. "Open it. Every single page inside." Her expression shifted between grief and cold resolve, a strange dual emotion I couldn't parse. I tore open the seal and dumped the contents across the wooden desk surface. Dozens of high-resolution photos spilled out first, shots of me at private VIP lounges with my project investors, blurred angles framing our casual business drinks to look like under-the-table bribery meetings. Every image was cropped and staged to paint me as a corrupt executive trading confidential project data for personal profit. Underneath the photo stack sat hundreds of printed internal company blueprints, revenue models, and proprietary client lists, each line highlighted with neon marker, paired side by side with competitive bid sheets from our biggest rival, Summit Global Tech. Data theft, corporate espionage, those two terms screamed at me from every annotated page. At the absolute bottom of the pile rested a bank statement printout for an offshore account I'd never heard of, registered under a distant deceased cousin's legal identity. Line-by-line deposits stacked up to 5 million USD wired to that account over the last 12 months. No explanation. No paper trail linking the money to any legitimate business transaction. My blood turned to ice in my veins, my hands shaking so hard the papers rattled between my fingers. I lifted my head to stare at Alara, my voice cracking with shock and terror. Where did you get all of this? Who handed you these fabricated files to ruin me? She stood perfectly still across the desk, no flicker of remorse or hesitation in her blank eyes. I sourced the photographers myself, that I hacked her home office laptop to copy every internal file. I set up that offshore account and deposited the fake wire transfers, printed all the bank records on my personal printer. She said every word slow and deliberate, each syllable landing like shards of glass piercing my chest. I stared at the woman I'd loved for nearly a decade, the girl I'd promised to protect and cherish forever, and could barely recognize her behind that cold, unyielding mask. Why? I snarled, stepping forward to grip her shoulders hard, shaking her gently in a desperate attempt to pull a real answer out of her. Did someone threaten you? Tell me who's forcing you to do this. We'll hire lawyers. Fix it together. A flicker of pity crossed her face, gone before I could process it. She pried my hands off her shoulders with a weak push, stepping back to create distance between us. It's too late to fix anything, Cole. Tomorrow morning, every single piece of evidence lands on the State Ethics Commission desk and the Vanguard boardroom table simultaneously. My legs gave out beneath me, and I collapsed into the leather office chair, all my strength vanishing in an instant. My career, my professional reputation, my entire life built over years of sacrifice. She'd single-handedly destroyed every piece of it with one folder of manufactured proof. Hell couldn't possibly be worse than the emptiness swallowing me whole in that study. She knelt down beside the chair, lifting a hand to brush my cheek, and I jerked my head hard to dodge her touch, unable to stand her skin against mine after what she'd done. Her hand hung suspended midair for a beat before falling limply back to her side. I'm so sorry, Cole. I didn't glance up at her. I stared fixed at the mountain of fabricated evidence spread across the desk, every photograph and document a permanent reminder of the betrayal coming from the only person I'd ever trusted fully. Sorry meant nothing now. From the second she'd planned this trap, there was nothing left between us but unbridled, burning hatred. I locked myself inside the study all night long, refusing to speak or look at her once. She sat silent outside the closed door the entire evening, never leaving the hallway for a single minute, waiting for a reaction I couldn't summon. When sunlight seeped through the window the next morning, the front door doorbell chimed sharp and unrelenting. I twisted the doorknob to find 2 state regulatory agents standing on the porch, official warrants clutched in their hands. I glanced backward over my shoulder into the living room, where Alara stood motionless in the white lace sundress I'd gifted her for our wedding day, her skin pale as bleached paper. Our eyes locked, and her lips moved soundlessly, mouthing the word sorry one last time. A bitter, broken laugh tore out of my throat. Sorry couldn't erase the life she'd ripped away from me. I mouthed back a silent promise, sharp and unforgiving. I'll wait for you. When I get out, you'll pay for every ounce of pain you've put me through. Her body convulsed with a violent shudder, and she buried her face in her palms to hide her tears as the agents escorted me out to their unmarked sedan. I didn't spare her a single glance on the way out the door, terrified if I looked back I'd snap and lash out at her for the irreversible damage she'd inflicted on my existence. They hauled me straight to county lockup before the formal arraignment even started. Every interrogation room reeked of stale coffee and disinfectant, the detectives cycling through shifts to hammer me with the same questions on loop. Where'd the 5 million offshore funds come from? How did I get proprietary Summit global bid data? Who paid those lounge photographers to document my bribery meetings? I repeated the same truth every single time. This was an elaborate framed job. My wife fabricated every shred of evidence against me. None of them bought a word. The evidence chain was airtight, constructed with meticulous precision by Alara. The offshore account used my long-dead cousin's ID. The photos had time-stamped metadata matching my calendar entries. The stolen internal files all carried traceable copies, linked to our home Wi-Fi. My high-priced corporate defense lawyer pulled every legal trick he knew, filed motions to suppress the forged records, subpoenaed forensic analysts to prove the bank logs were altered. Nothing stuck. The judge called the corroboration overwhelming on the preliminary hearing. Vanguard cut all ties within 48 hours, issued a public statement distancing themselves from my unethical criminal conduct. Every coworker, every business associate I'd broken bread with for years blocked my calls overnight. I watched my professional identity dissolve completely, left with nothing but a mugshot and a pending felony label hanging over my head. My parents drove 6 hours to visit after the news hit local business news outlets. My mom sobbed so hard through the glass partition, she could barely speak, her hair streaked with fresh gray I hadn't seen before. I couldn't bring myself to tell her Alara was the architect of my ruin. She'd adored Alara like a daughter for years, and the truth would have shattered her fragile heart entirely. I lied and said internal corporate sabotage tanked my project, told them not to waste gas driving back for future visits. My father, quiet and pragmatic, pressed me hard on who'd gain from my downfall. I racked my brain for rivals, grudges, anyone with motive to ruin my billion-dollar contract, but I kept circling back to Alara. No competitor had the access to my home, my laptops, my private schedule that she possessed. I couldn't reconcile her years of soft devotion with the cold, calculated trap she'd laid on our anniversary. Love and hatred tangled so tight in my chest, I could barely breathe most nights. I'd lie awake on the metal jail cot replaying every happy memory we shared, then snap back to the manila folder of forged proof and burn with unbridled rage all over again. The jury deliberated less than 3 hours. Verdict: guilty on corporate espionage and felony bribery. Combined sentence, 10 years federal prison. I stood at the defense table numb, scanning the sparse spectator row as the judge read the sentencing parameters, and there she was. Alara, hood pulled low over her head, black surgical mask covering half her face, hunched in the farthest back corner of the courtroom. Even disguised head to toe, I recognized the slant of her shoulders, the way she twisted her fingers together when anxious. Our eyes locked across the room for one split second. She flinched hard, shoulders caving inward, and ducked her gaze to the linoleum floor instantly. I tilted my chin up, mouth forming a silent, vow only she could read. I'll wait. She crumpled forward, hands covering her entire face, not lifting her head again until bailiffs led me out of the courtroom. Federal penitentiary hit far harder than county holding ever could. The unwritten yard rules were brutal, new inmates forced to fight to earn basic respect. On my first night in the shared dorm cell, 3 convicted armed robbers cornered me by the metal bathroom stall, their leader covered in a thick scar slicing down his left cheekbone. He shoved my chest hard, demanding I hand over any commissary snacks I'd received during intake. I refused to beg, refused to cower, and they swarmed me, fists and boots landing across my ribs, jaw, spine until I collapsed onto the concrete floor gasping for air. I didn't make a sound through the beating, didn't plead for mercy. Fear was weakness here, and weakness got you victimized daily. By the next morning's yard recreation hour, I'd stashed a sharp chunk of broken concrete under my jumpsuit waistband. That night, the scarred ringleader came for round 2, reaching for my neck to slam me into the cinder block wall. I swung the rock with every ounce of pent-up fury, connecting dead center with his temple. Blood flooded his face instantly. I didn't stop striking even when he dropped to his knees, straddling his torso and slamming the jagged stone over and over until guards sprinted in screaming, yanking me backward and restraining both of us. I spent 15 days straight in solitary confinement, pitch-black cell barely big enough to stretch my legs, mold and mildew coating every wall surface. When they released me back to general population, every inmate avoided eye contact crossing the yard. Word spread fast I'd fight to the brink of serious injury without hesitation, and no one dared target me after that. Violence carved out a fragile safety bubble I clung to for years. The days blurred into a monotonous cycle. Wake at 5 a.m., mandatory labor detail, yard time, chow hall, lock-in, repeat. My parents visited once every 30 days without fail, each trip aging them visibly more. After 2 years watching them cry through the glass, I submitted a formal request to deny all family visitation rights. I couldn't stand watching them grieve a version of me that died the day Alara handed over that manila folder. I wrote weekly letters telling them I was stable, keeping all graphic details of prison violence locked away between my own thoughts. I never expected Alara to step foot in the visitor's wing, not after what she'd done. 2 years to the day of my conviction, the guard called my inmate number over the intercom and said I had a female guest waiting. I thought I'd hallucinated at first. I slid into the plastic booth opposite the glass partition, picking up the handset. Alara sat on the other side, frame gaunt, eye socket sunken deep, skin a sickly ashen tone that didn't match the vibrant woman I'd married. She wore a plain black wool coat, no makeup whatsoever, her dark hair pulled back in a messy, loose ponytail. Her gaze swirled with a messy cocktail of guilt, sorrow, and something unidentifiable lingering beneath the surface. I kept my tone ice cold, no hint of the love we'd shared buried anywhere in my voice. Didn't expect to see you here. What? Come watch how thoroughly you destroyed my life for entertainment. Her throat bobbed, voice raw and scratchy like she hadn't slept in weeks. Cole, are you holding up okay? Perfect. All things considered, $0.5 million in fake bribery charges, 10 years locked away, all thanks to your hard work, but I couldn't be better. I tilted my head, sarcasm dripping thick off every word. I assumed Summit Global handed you a huge payout for handing me over. Living the high life now. Tears welled in her eyes instantly, spilling down her cheeks before she could wipe them away. That's not how any of this went. Save the excuses. You built every lie, handed me straight to the feds. You should be celebrating your victory, not moping in a prison visitation booth. I leaned back against the plastic chair, staring her down without mercy. Cry all you want, but none of this sympathy act undoes the 10 years I'm stuck serving because of you. I just needed to see you, to make sure you were alive. She gripped the phone receiver so tight her knuckles whitened. Consider your curiosity satisfied. Now leave. The sight of you makes me physically sick. I started to push my chair backward to stand, ready to signal the guard to cut the visit short. I'll make this clear. Whatever you gained by framing me isn't worth the hell I'll drag you through the second I walk out these gates. Every loss you inflicted on me, I'll repay 100-fold. My voice echoed loud enough the neighboring visitors turned to stare through the glass dividers. A uniformed guard tapped the booth window once, warning me to lower my volume. Alera's lips trembled, all color draining from her face, unable to form a single retort to my threat. The buzzer blared, signaling the end of visitation minutes later, and she stood slowly, glancing over her shoulder one last time as the guard escorted her out, her expression hollow, defeated, stripped of any fight left in her. I sat alone in the booth long after she left, the handset still pressed to my ear. I expected unbridled satisfaction after confronting her, but all I felt was a hollow, gnawing ache in my chest. I hated her with every fiber of my being, yet every small twitch of her jaw, every tear she shed reactivated old buried memories of us happy together. I couldn't shake the contradiction burning inside me. She'd ruined everything, yet I still couldn't erase her from my mind completely. That visit wasn't a one-time slip-up. Alera showed up every single month after that. Rain or snow, holidays or work weeks. Most sessions passed in heavy silence. She'd sit watching me through the glass, and I'd stare straight ahead, refusing to engage in conversation. I rejected every care package she submitted through the mail system, sent every cash deposit she added to my commissary account straight back unclaimed. I wanted her stuck drowning in permanent guilt, forced to witness the aftermath of her betrayal month after month with no way to ease the weight of what she'd done. 5 years post-conviction, the warden notified me of approved early reduction for consistent good behavior, and 2 separate instances I'd intervened to stop fatal inmate assaults, plus saving a guard suffering a sudden cardiac episode during yard duty. 10 years knocked down to 7 total. When I held the official court-ordered reduction paperwork in my hands, my first thought wasn't relief. It was the countdown to confronting Alera and tearing apart the comfortable life I'd assumed she'd built after ruining mine. The remaining 2 years moved faster than I could process. I spent every free hour in the prison law library and education wing, poring over corporate finance textbooks, coding certification materials, civil litigation manuals to keep my mind sharp and avoid falling out of touch with the outside world's industry standards. I stuck to a rigorous daily weightlifting routine to rebuild muscle mass lost during solitary confinement, determined to leave the penitentiary physically and mentally ready to seek full retribution. On my official release date, I stepped through the giant metal front gate into bright, unfiltered sunlight, no family waiting on the curb like I'd requested. I stood alone on the sidewalk, scanning empty parking spots, wondering where to go next with zero home, zero career, zero support network left intact. A sleek black sedan rolled to a stop directly in front of me 30 seconds later, the passenger window lowering to reveal Alera's gaunt, exhausted face. I froze on the curb, squinting against the midday sun burning my eyes after years behind tinted prison glass. It was Alera behind the wheel, her dark hair streaked with faint ash strands I'd never seen before, cheekbones sharp enough to cut through her thin skin. No designer jewelry, no fancy makeup, just a faded black blazer and plain cotton slacks, nothing like the lavish lifestyle I'd spent 5 years imagining she'd built off my downfall. Get in the car, Cole. Her voice was flat, drained, stripped of any softness we once shared. I didn't move an inch. Why would I get anywhere near a vehicle you own? Last time I trusted you to drive me somewhere, you handed me over to federal agents. She gripped the steering wheel tight, enough her knuckles bleached white, jaw locked in quiet desperation. You've got nowhere to go right now. Your old house was foreclosed 2 years ago. Your apartment lease lapsed. Your parents live 3 states away, and you told them not to visit. I'm not here to trick you again. I just need to get you out of this midday heat. Her words hit true. I'd burned every bridge intentionally while locked up, cut all contact with my family to spare them grief. I had no keys, no cash, no phone, no place to crash. After a long, bitter beat of hesitation, I wrenched open the passenger door and slid onto the leather seat. The faint gardenia perfume lingered inside the cabin, muted now, buried under a heavy scent of burnt coffee and sleepless nights. She shifted into drive without another word, navigating city highways in dead silence, only glancing at me in the rearview mirror every 30 seconds like she was afraid I'd vanish mid-drive. Where are we heading? I stared straight out the window, refusing to meet her gaze. My downtown high-rise. She kept her eyes fixed on traffic ahead. I've got a spare guest suite fully furnished, brand new clothes sized for you, a laptop, cash in the nightstand drawer. You can stay as long as you need, leave whenever you want, no strings attached. A bitter laugh burst out of me. So, after framing me and throwing me in prison for half a decade, you're playing the generous savior? You think a fancy apartment and a few $100 wipe 5 years of concrete cells and constant violence off the record. I don't expect forgiveness. I just owe you somewhere safe to land. Her tone didn't rise, no defensive anger to mask her guilt. 10 minutes later, we pulled into an underground parking garage lined with luxury imported cars. She led me up a private elevator to the 42nd floor penthouse. The space was massive, floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the entire city skyline, expensive minimalist furniture, custom marble countertops, but the whole place felt dead, hollow, no personal warmth anywhere. No throw blankets, no photos scattered on side tables, no half-empty mugs or messy books stacked on shelves. The only personal item visible was a framed wedding photo sitting alone on the granite coffee table, our grinning faces staring back at me like a cruel joke. I marched over, fingers curling around the frame ready to hurl it across the room and shatter the glass. Halfway through lifting it, I stopped cold. The memory of our wedding day crashed over me hard, the vows we'd spoken, the promises we swore under white flower arches. My chest tightened, and I flipped the frame face down on the table instead of breaking it, unable to fully destroy that last fragment of our old life. Alara hovered by the kitchen entryway, watching every small movement I made without daring to interrupt. She showed me down a long hallway to a separate guest bedroom, brand new linen sheets folded crisp on the mattress, a closet packed with men's dress shirts, jeans, jackets, all matching my old size. A brand new smartphone sat on the oak nightstand, a leather wallet stuffed with cash and debit cards laid beside it. Everything was perfectly prepared, every detail catered to my needs like she'd spent months planning my release before I even stepped foot out of prison. I slammed the bedroom door shut behind me, stripped off the cheap intake jumpsuit they'd given me on release, and stepped into the shower. The hot water burned my skin, washing away the grime of years of institutional labor. When I stepped back out, Alara had laid 3 of my favorite meals on the coffee table in the open living area: honey garlic ribs, roasted asparagus, truffle mashed potatoes, the exact spread she'd cooked the night she handed me the manila folder of forged evidence. I planted myself on the far end of the sectional sofa, arms crossed tight over my chest, ignoring the food entirely. She sank onto the carpeted floor at my feet, her back pressed against the couch legs, looking up at me with red-rimmed, exhausted eyes. I made all of this for you. I don't want anything you've touched. Every meal, every shirt, every dollar you hand me is blood money earned from ruining my career. Her shoulders sagged forward, hair falling to hide half her face. I know I can never pay back what I took from you, but I'll spend every remaining year of my life trying to make it right. Make it right. I leaned forward, voice sharp enough to slice metal. You stole 5 prime years of my career, ruined my reputation, locked me away with violent felons, turned my entire family against me indirectly. Your life, your business, this penthouse, none of that is worth a single day I spent in solitary confinement. She nodded slowly, accepting every harsh word without pushing back. Whatever you need for me to ease the pain, I'll do it. Anything at all. A sick, twisted urge flared hot in my chest, a craving to inflict even a fraction of the suffering she dumped on my shoulders. I leaned down, fingers wrapping firm around her jaw, forcing her to tilt her chin up and hold eye contact with me. Anything, you said? Her breath hitched, pupils blowing wide with a mix of shame and quiet despair, but she didn't pull away or fight my grip. Yes, anything you ask for. Take every article of clothing off right now. I spoke low, close to her ear, watching every flicker of agony cross her face. Her entire body locked rigid, hands curling into loose fists at her sides. Tears welled instantly, rolling unbroken streams down her pale cheeks, yet she didn't lift a hand to push me away. She just stared through me, gaze distant, like she was watching someone else endure this humiliation instead of herself. The second I saw that hollow, broken look in her eyes, the cruel rush of satisfaction vanished completely, replaced by a crushing weight of guilt I hadn't anticipated. I released her jaw in one sharp motion, kicking the glass coffee table hard enough to send plates and cutlery crashing across the marble floor, ceramic shards skittering everywhere. Get out of my sight. I can't stand to look at you right now. She didn't argue, didn't snap back, didn't even wipe the tears off her face. She knelt slow on the broken tile, picking up every sharp piece of ceramic one by one, her fingers scraped and cut by jagged edges without a single flinch. I stormed back into the guest bedroom and slammed the door shut again, locking the deadbolt behind me, drowning out the soft sound of her quiet cleaning outside the hallway. For the next week we existed in a strange, suffocating stalemate inside the penthouse. She operated like a silent ghost, waking at dawn to cook 3 full meals daily, doing all my laundry, restocking the fridge with every snack I used to love, leaving fresh coffee outside my bedroom door each morning. She slept on the small leather couch in the living room every night, surrendering the master bedroom to me entirely, never once stepping foot inside my guest suite without a quiet knock and my permission first. We rarely exchanged more than 3 sentences a day. I spent every waking hour glued to the laptop she'd supplied, catching up on 5 years of corporate market shifts, reading industry news, scrolling job boards nonstop to rebuild a professional identity. Every resume I submitted got rejected within 48 hours flat. The background check flag for felony corporate sabotage tanked every application, no matter how glowing my past performance reviews read. Midway through the second week, Alara knocked on my bedroom door after I'd spent 3 hours staring at a screen full of rejection emails. She balanced a mug of warm milk in one palm, hesitation thick in every movement. You've been applying to corporate director roles, haven't you? I shot her a cold glare. You tracking my browser history now? Spying on me like you did back when you stole my work files. I glanced over your screen by accident when I dropped off breakfast. She set the mug down on the desk beside my keyboard. I own an independent investment consulting firm I built over these past 5 years. The company's valued at nearly $4 billion now. You could come work for me. No mandatory client meetings, no public appearances, a 7-figure base salary regardless of output. You can quit the second you land another position you prefer. I let out a bitter, hollow laugh. Work under the woman who framed me for white-collar crime? You think I'd step foot inside your office building voluntarily? It's not charity. You're one of the sharpest strategic analysts in the state. Your skills shouldn't rot away just because of what I did to you. She reached a hand toward my arm, pulling back halfway before touching my skin, scared of crossing another line. I just want to give you a stable foothold back into the industry you dedicated your life to. I don't need your pity job offer. Leave me alone. I turned my back fully, signaling the conversation was over. She lingered in the doorway for another minute, quiet grief radiating off her frame, before turning to walk back toward the living room. Through the thin wooden door, I heard soft, muffled sobs echo down the hallway for hours after she left. My mind spiraled into endless confusion, bouncing between unbridled rage and a confusing, unwanted sympathy I hated feeling. If she truly hated me and wanted me destroyed, why pour every ounce of her wealth and energy into supporting my release? If she'd loved me all along, why fabricate thousands of pages of fake evidence to lock me away for half a decade? Her motives were a tangled, unsolvable knot I couldn't unpick alone. I resolved to watch her every move closely, dig into her daily routine, hunt for hidden answers she'd refused to speak aloud for 5 long years. I started shadowing her quiet schedule each morning, pretending to scroll job postings while observing her actions. She left the penthouse at 7 sharp every weekday morning for the office, returned after 10 p.m. most nights, buried in back-to-back client meetings and quarterly board calls. She never met friends for dinner, never attended social galas, never took personal vacations or weekend getaways. Her entire world revolved around the consulting firm and waiting on my every need back at the high-rise. One afternoon, I snuck into her home office while she was out at a client pitch, unlocking her desk filing cabinet to pull physical printouts of the company's yearly financial statements. The numbers stunned me. Massive profit margins, rapid national expansion, dozens of satellite branches opened across the country. She built an empire single-handedly in 5 years, yet carried zero joy or pride from her success, only endless exhaustion and unspoken grief weighing down every step she took. That night, she stumbled back into the penthouse well past midnight, completely intoxicated on expensive red wine, balance unsteady as she tripped over the entryway rug. I stepped out of the guest bedroom without thinking, crossing to catch her before she crashed onto the marble floor. Her vision blurred, gaze locking onto my face the second I steadied her shoulders, a fragile, broken smile tugging at her lips. She lifted a shaky palm to cut my cheek, skin burning hot from alcohol flush. Cole, you're really home again. Don't ever leave me alone like that again, okay? I've missed you every single second. Tears spilled thick down her cheeks as she clung tight to my torso, burying her face into my chest. I'm so sorry I messed everything up. Forgive me, please. I've been begging for a chance to make amends for 5 years straight. I froze rigid in place, every muscle locked tight, caught off guard by her raw, unfiltered vulnerability. For the first time since the anniversary betrayal, the layers of cold, guarded distance she'd wrapped around herself cracked wide open, exposing the endless suffering she'd hidden beneath her composed businesswoman mask. A sharp, painful twist tugged at my heart, a quiet realization blooming slow. Whatever hidden truth sat behind her betrayal, it had destroyed her just as thoroughly as it destroyed me.